Hi, everybody. We're going to do Chinese Cinderella. And don't ask me why my home sign is tipped sideways. But anyway, so we're going to get started again. I apologize if I slaughter some names because it is Chinese stuff. So I'm not Chinese. Okay. Chapter 1, Top of the Class. Autumn 1941. As soon as I got home from school, Aunt Baba noticed the silver medal dangling from the left breast pocket of my uniform. She was combing her hair in front of the mirror in our room when I rushed in and I plopped my school bag down onto my bed. What's that hanging on your dress? It's something special that Mother Agnes gave me in front of the whole class this afternoon. She called it an award. My aunt looked thrilled. So soon? You only started kindergarten a week ago. What is it for? It is for leading my class this week. When Mother Agnes pinned it on my dress, she said I could wear it for 7 days. Here, this is the certificate. Goes with it. I opened my school bag and handed her an envelope as I climbed onto her lap. She opened the envelope and took out the certificate. Why, it's all written in French or English or some other foreign language. How do you expect me to read this, my precious little treasure? I knew she was pleased because she was smiling as she hugged me. One day soon, she continued, you'll be able to translate all this into Chinese for me. Until then, we'll just write today's date on the envelope and put it away somewhere safe. Go close the door properly and put on the latch so no one will come in. I watched her open her closet door and take out her safe deposit box. We took the key from a gold chain around her neck and placed my certificate underneath her jade bracelet, pearl necklace, and diamond watch, as if my award were also some precious jewel impossible to replace. As she closed the lid, an old photograph fell out. I picked up the faded picture, and I saw a solemn young man and woman, both dressed in old-fashioned Chinese robes. The man looked rather familiar. Is this a picture of my father and dead mama? I asked. No, this is the wedding picture of your grandparents. Your Yi Yi was 26, and your Nai Nai was only 15. She quickly took the photo from me and locked it into her box. Do you have a picture of my dead mama? She avoided my eyes. No, but I have wedding pictures of your father and your stepmother, Naing. You were only 1 year old when they married. Do you want to see them? No, I've seen those before. I just want to see one of my own mama. Do I look like her? Aunt Baba did not reply. She busied herself with putting the safe deposit box back into her closet. After a while, I said, when did my mama die? Your mother came down with a high fever 3 days after you were born. She died when you were 2 weeks old. She hesitated for a moment and then exclaimed suddenly, how dirty your hands are. Have you been playing in that sandbox at school again? Go wash them at once. Then come back and do your homework. I did as I was told. Though I was only 4 years old, I understood that I should not ask Aunt Baba too many questions about my dead mama. Big sister once told me, Aunt Baba and Mama used to be best friends a long time ago. They worked together in a bank in Shanghai owned by our great aunt, the youngest sister of grandfather Yi Yi. But then Mama died giving birth to you. If you had not been born, Mama would still be alive. She died because of you. You are bad luck. Chapter 2. A Tianjin family. At the time of my birth, Big Sister was 6.5 years old. My 3 brothers were 5, 4, and 3. They blamed me for causing Mama's death and never forgave me. A year later, father remarried our stepmother, whom we called Naing. She was a 17-year-old Eurasian beauty, 14 years his junior. Father always introduced her to his friends as his French wife, though she was actually half French and half Chinese. Besides Chinese, she also spoke French and English. She was almost as tall as father, stood very straight, and dressed only in French clothes, many of which came from Paris. Her thick, wavy black hair never had a curl out of place. Her large dark brown eyes were fringed with long, thick lashes. She wore heavy makeup, expensive French perfume, and many diamonds and pearls. Grandmother Nene told us to call her Naing, Chinese term for mother. 1 year after their wedding, they had a son, fourth brother, followed by a daughter, little sister. There were now 7 of us, 5 children from father's first wife and 2 from our stepmother Naing. Besides father and Naing, we lived with our grandfather Yi and grandmother Nene and aunt Baba in a big house in the French concession of Tianjin, a port city on the northeast coast of China. Aunt Baba was the older sister of our father. Because she was meek, shy, unmarried, and had no money of her own, they ordered her to take care of me. From an early age, I slept in a crib in her room. This suited me well because I grew to know her better and better. Besides a room, we came to share a life apart from the rest of our family. Under the circumstances, perhaps it was inevitable that in time we came to care for each other very deeply. Many years before, China had lost a war, known as the Opium War, against England and France. As a result, many coastal cities in China, such as Tianjin and Shanghai, came to be occupied by foreign soldiers. The conquerors parceled out the best areas of those treaty ports for themselves, claiming them as their own territories or concessions. Tianjin's French concession was like a little piece of Paris transplanted into the center of this big Chinese city. Our house was built in the French style and looked as if it had been lifted from a tree-shaded avenue near the Eiffel Tower. Surrounded by a charming garden, it had porches, balconies, bow windows, awnings, and a slanting tile roof. Across the street was the St. Louis Catholic Boys' School, where the teachers were French missionaries. In December 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the United States became involved in the Second World War. Although Tianjin was occupied by the Japanese, the French concession was still being governed by French officials. French policemen strutted about looking important and barking out orders in their own language, which they expected everyone to understand and obey. At my school, Mother Agnes taught us the alphabet and how to count in French. Many of the streets around our house were named after dead French heroes or Catholic saints. When translated into Chinese, these street names became so complicated that Yi and Nene often had trouble remembering them. Bilingual store signs were common, but the most exclusive shops painted their signs only in French. Nene told us this was the foreigners' way of announcing that no Chinese were allowed there except for maids in charge of their white children. Chapter 3, Nene's Bound Feet. The evening of the day when I brought home my silver school medal, the dinner bell rang at 7. Aunt Baba took my hand and led me to the dining table. My grandparents were just ahead of us. Aunt Baba told me to run quickly to the head of the big round dining table and pull out Grandmother Nene's chair for her. Nene walked very slowly because of her bound feet. I watched her as she inched her way toward me, hobbling and swaying as if her toes had been partly cut off. As she sat down with a sigh of relief, I placed my foot next to her embroidered black silk shoe to compare sizes. Nene, how come your feet are so tiny? I asked. When I was 3 years old, a tight bandage was wound around my feet, bending the toes under the sole and crushing the arch so that my feet would remain small all my life. This has been a custom in China for over 1,000 years, ever since the Tang Dynasty. In my day, small feet were considered feminine and beautiful. If you had large, unbound feet, no man would marry you. This was the custom. Did it hurt? Of course! It hurt so badly I couldn't sleep. I screamed with pain and begged my mother to free my feet, but she wouldn't. In fact, the pain has never gone away. My feet have hurt every day since they were bound and continue to hurt today. I had a pair of perfectly normal feet when I was born, but they maimed me on purpose and gave me lifelong arthritis so I would be attractive. Just be thankful this horrible custom was done away with 30 years ago. Otherwise, your feet would be crippled and you wouldn't be able to run or jump either. I went to the foot of the table and sat in my assigned seat between second brother and third brother as my three brothers ran in, laughing and jostling each other. I cringed as second brother sat down on my right. He was always grabbing my share of goodies when nobody was looking and saying mean things to me. Second brother used to sit next to big brother, but the two of them fought a lot. Father finally separated them when they broke a fruit bowl fighting over a pear. Big brother winked at me as he sat down. He had had a twinkle in his eyes and was whistling a tune. The day before, he tried to teach me how to whistle, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make it work. Was Big Brother up to some new mischief today? The previous Sunday afternoon, I had come across him crouched by Grandfather Yi Yi's bed, watching Yi Yi like a cat while he took his nap. A long black hair from Yi Yi's right nostril was being blown out and drawn in with every snore. Silently but swiftly, Big Brother suddenly approached Yi Yi and carefully pinched the nasal hair between his forefinger and thumb. There was a tantalizing pause as Yi Yi exhaled with a long, contented wheeze. Meanwhile, I held my breath, mesmerized and not daring to make a sound. Finally, Yi Yi inhaled deeply. Doggedly, Big Brother hung on. The hair was wrenched from its root. Yi Yi woke up with a yell, jumped from his bed, took in the situation with one glance, and went after Big Brother with a feather duster. Laughing hysterically, Big Brother rushed out of the room, slid down the banister, and made a clean getaway into the garden, all the time holding Yi Yi's hair aloft like a trophy. Third brother took his seat on my left. He had his lips pursed and was trying unsuccessfully to whistle. Seeing the medal on my uniform, he raised his eyebrow and smiled at me. What's that? He said in his quiet, thoughtful way. It's an award for leading my class. My teacher says I can wear it for 7 days. Congratulations. First week at school and you get a medal? Not bad. While I was basking in third brother's praise, I suddenly felt a hard blow across the back of my head. I turned around to see second brother glowering at me. What did you do that for? I asked angrily. Deliberately, he took my right arm under the table and gave it a quick, hard twist while no one was looking. Because I feel like it. That's why, you ugly little squirt. This will teach you to show off your medal. I turned for help from third brother, but he was looking straight ahead, obviously not wishing to be involved. At that moment, Father, Nying, and Big Sister came in together, and second brother immediately let go of my arm. Nying was speaking to Big Sister in English, and Big Sister was nodding assent. She glanced at all of us smugly as she took her seat between second brother and Nying, full of her own self-importance at being so favored by our stepmother. Because her left arm had been paralyzed by a birth injury, her movements were slow and awkward, and she liked to order me or third brother to carry out her chores. Wu Mei, fifth younger sister, she now said, go fetch my English Chinese dictionary. It's on my bed in my room. Nying wants me to translate something. I was halfway off my chair when Nene said, do the translation later. Sit down, Wu Mei. Let's have dinner before the dishes get cold. Here, my first pick, a selection of soft foods to send up to the nursery so the wet nurse can feed the two youngest. She turned to Naing with a smile. Another 2 years and all 7 grandchildren will be sitting around this table. Won't that be wonderful? Naing's 2-year-old son, fourth brother, and her infant daughter, little sister, were still too young to eat with us. However, they were already special from the moment of their birth. Though nobody actually said so, it was simply understood that everyone considered Naing's real children better looking and smarter than her stepchildren, simply superior in every way. Who dared disagree? For dessert, the maids brought in a huge bowl of my favorite fruit, dragon's eyes. I was so happy I couldn't help laughing out loud. Nene gave us each a small bowl of fruit, and I counted 7 dragon eyes in mine. I peeled off the leathery brown skin and was savoring its delicate white flesh when Father suddenly pointed to my medal. Is this medal for leading your class? He asked. I nodded eagerly, too excited to speak. A hush fell upon the table. This was the first time anyone could remember Father singling me out or saying anything to me. Everyone looked at my medal. Is the left side of your chest heavier? Father continued, beaming with pride. Are you tilting? I flushed with pleasure, and I could barely swallow. My big dia was actually teasing me. On his way out, he even patted me on the head. Then he said, continue studying hard and bring honor to our Yen family name so we can be proud of you. All the grown-ups beamed at me as they followed Father out of the room. How wonderful! My triumph had become Father's triumph. I must study harder and keep wearing this medal so I can go on pleasing Father. But what was this? Big Sister was coming toward me with a scowl. Without a word, she reached over and snatched two of my dragon eyes from my bowl as she left the room. My three brothers followed her example. Then they all ran out, leaving me quite alone with my silver medal, staring at my empty bowl. Okay, I might be able to get page 20. All right, chapter 4, Life in Tianjin. A few months later, in early 1942, wintertime, when I started kindergarten at St. Joseph's French convent school, Big Sister had been going there for years and years and was already in the fifth grade. She complained so much about having to walk me to and from school that grandmother Nene finally told Mao, the rickshaw puller, to pull us there and back. Father had bought the shiny black rickshaw 3 years earlier as a 50th birthday present so that Nai could visit her friends and play mahjong. It had inflatable rubber tires, a brass lamp on each side, and a bell operable by foot as well as by hand. Every morning, Mao be, could be seen sweeping the seat, washing the sides, brushing the canopy, and polishing the brass. My brothers were forever begging him to let them pull each other back and forth in the garden, but Mao was fiercely protective and would scatter them away. Outside our garden, an old, blind, crippled beggar woman often sat on the pavement. As soon as Mao opened the gate, she would bang her tin plate, tilt back her head, and wail in a loud voice, have pity on me, big sister, Daji. And I were both a little frightened of her. Run faster, big sister, Daiji would urge Mao. Get away from her as fast as you can. I was always happy when our rickshaw approached the imposing red brick building of St. Joseph's. I loved everything about my school. All the other little girls dressed in identical starched white uniforms, just like mine. The French Franciscan nuns in black and white habits with big metal crosses dangling from their necks, learning numbers, catechism, and the alphabet, playing hopscotch and skipping rope at recess. My classmates made me feel as if I belonged. Unlike my siblings, nobody looked down on me. The school bell rang and it was time to go home. I rushed out of the classroom and ran straight toward Mao, who was squatting on his haunches between the handlebars of his rickshaw, smoking a cigarette on the pavement by the school gate. He smiled as I approached and waved me onto his cab. I wonder how long we're going to have to wait today, he grumbled as he lit a fresh cigarette. I said nothing, but I knew what he meant. It was annoying. Big Sister was always among the last to leave when school finished. She seemed to enjoy having her friends notice that her rickshaw puller and younger sister could be found waiting for her every afternoon while she took her own sweet time. Today we waited for her even longer than usual. It was beastly cold and there was a sharp northwesterly wind blowing. After a while, Mao wandered off to chat with a tea peddler on the corner and warm his hands against the peddler's steaming kettle. My face, fingers, and toes were numb and cold. Finally, I saw her appear on the playground, laughing and joking with a few big girls from her class, until the nuns shooed them out and locked the gate behind them. Big Sister scowled as she climbed in while I shrank into my corner. She jabbed the bell angrily several times with her foot and called sharply. Mao ran back, stepped between the shafts, and off we went. What did the nuns teach you today? Big Sister suddenly asked imperiously. They taught us about God, I replied proudly. I'm going to test you. Who made you? I was happy because I knew the answer. God made me. Why did God make you? I don't know because teacher hasn't told us yet. That's just an excuse, Big Sister screamed. You don't know because you're stupid and you don't deserve to wear this. Suddenly she grabbed my medal and jerked it, becoming enraged because I was pushing her away. Take that, medal winner, teacher's pet. Who do you think you are, showing off week after week? Big Sister cried as she slapped me with her strong right hand. Ah Mao, who had stopped at a red light, turned around to look when he heard the slap. Big Sister nonchalantly straightened her uniform and ordered him to run faster because she was hungry. She told Ah Mao that Cook was making pot stickers and they were her favorite afternoon snack. As soon as we were home, Big Sister jumped down and ran off. Ah Mao helped me alight, pointed to my medal, smiled broadly, and gave me the thumbs up sign, shaking his fist up and down to signal his admiration. I was winning the medal every week and wearing it constantly. I knew this displeased my siblings because Big Sister and second brother, especially Big Sister and second brother, but it was the only way to make Father take notice and be proud of me. Besides, my teachers and schoolmates seemed to be happy for me. I loved my school more and more. Finally, it was the end of the term. Our whole school assembled into the auditorium for prize giving. The French Monsignor himself was waiting on stage to present us with our awards. Mother Agnes suddenly called my name in front of everyone. She announced that I had won a special award for wearing the weekly medal for more weeks than any other student. My heart beat wildly as I approached the stage, but the steps leading up to the Monsignor were too high and steep for my short little legs. What should I do? Finally, I had no choice but to climb up on the stage on my hands and knees. Everyone was hooting with laughter and clapping wildly. Were they applauding me? On my way back to my seat, I couldn't help uh, noticing that all of the prize winners, I was the only one unaccompanied by anyone from my family. Nobody was there to pat my head or congratulate me, not even my Aunt Baba. As for Big Sister, she had refused to go to school that day. She had said she had a stomach ache. Aunt Baba told me that Japan was a strong country that had conquered most of China, including the city of Tianjin, where we lived. My three brothers were always grumbling about the Japanese classes they were required to take at school. We children were supposed to show our respect and bow whenever we ran past Japanese soldiers. Otherwise, they would punish us or even kill us. Once, Big Brother's best friend was kicked and slapped by a Japanese soldier because he forgot to bow when he ran past. That morning, Yi had stopped third brother from kicking a paper ball made out of old newspapers because a photo of the Japanese emperor was visible on its surface. Everyone hated the Japanese, but even the grown-ups were scared of them. Now there was talk that the Japanese were demanding to become Father's business partners. Father looked terribly worried, and his hair started to fall out. Many Japanese men in business suits came to the house looking for him, even on Sundays. They came with Japanese bodyguards who wore surgical masks on their faces and carried scary looking bayonets with big, sharp knives at the tips. It was a great nuisance because we had to bow and show respect to anyone who looked Japanese. After their departure, Father would talk to Yi alone for hours and hours in their office. One morning, Father left the house to buy stamps at the post office down the road. He never came home. Yi reported Father's disappearance to the police. He put up posters and placed advertisements in the newspapers offering a reward for news of Father's whereabouts, alive or dead. The Japanese came back a few times looking for Father but soon lost interest. With Father absent, his business ground to a halt. There was no more money to be made, and the Japanese dropped their demands. A few months later, our stepmother, Nying, took our younger brother, fourth brother, and also left the house. Nobody knew where they went. It was all rather frightening and very mysterious. Yi told us that Father, Nying, and fourth brother had gone away for a while. After the strangeness wore off, we weren't particularly bothered because Father traveled often on business. Besides, Yi, Nying, and Aunt Baba were still home. The Japanese stopped bothering us, life settled down and became tranquil, even happy. Yi employed 7 maids, a cook, a chauffeur, and Ao Mao, the rickshaw puller. The grown-ups held frequent mahjong parties. We children could invite our friends home to play. On Sundays, Yi took everyone out for drives in Father's big black motor car. We lunched at different restaurants and the foreign concessions, French, Russian, German, Italian, and Japanese. Sometimes we even got to go to movies suitable for children. Life seemed better than ever. Father, Naing, and fourth brother had been gone for well over a year, and I'd almost forgotten them. There was a heat wave, and we were all in the parlor discussing the next day's dinner menu. Aunt Baba suggested to cook that we should have dumplings instead of rice for a change. These yummy dumplings were stuffed with pork, chives, and spring onions that were absolutely delicious. Big brother shouted that he could eat 50 of them at one sitting. Second brother immediately claimed 60, and third brother wanted 60 also. Big sister ordered 70. Big brother told her she was already too fat. She screamed at him to shut up, and they started to argue. Nanny said, "What a racket. I'm getting a headache from all this commotion. It's getting late. I'm going to my room and soak my aching feet." She turned to me. "Wu Mei, run down to the kitchen. Tell them to bring me a pan of hot water." I watched the maid pour the steaming hot water from a thermos flask into the enamel basin and followed her into Nene's bedroom. Nene was sitting on the edge of her bed and slowly unwinding the filmy soap bindings from her feet. "Are you sure you want to stay here?" she asked me. "Your Nene's feet are going to stink up this room as soon as I take these bindings off." "Please let me stay," I begged as I squatted beside her on the floor. The truth was that I was fascinated by her tiny feet. It was like watching a horror movie. You want to see it, and you don't want to see it at the same time. I stared at Nene's toes, all deformed and twisted grotesquely beneath her soles. Slowly she immersed them in the pan of hot water, sighing with relief and contentment. She then rubbed them gently with a bar of sweet-smelling soap until the whole basin was covered with lather. Aunt Baba came in and helped Nene trim her thick toenails and cut off pieces of dead skin. "See how lucky you are," Nene said to me. "By being born at the right time, both you and your Aunt Baba didn't have to go through the torture I went through in having my feet found. How I wish I could have just one day when my feet didn't hurt." "When Nene was your age, she couldn't run or jump anymore," Aunt Baba said to me. "And here you even get to go to school every day, just like your brothers. You better run along now and get to bed. It's way after your bedtime." After I left, Aunt Baba talked to Nene for a little while longer. She then went to take her bath. 15 minutes later, Yi was pounding on her bathroom door. Nene had fainted and was frothing at the mouth. Aunt Baba telephoned the doctor, but it was already too late. Nene had died from a massive stroke. I woke up from a sound sleep and saw Aunt Baba sitting by herself at the dressing table and crying. Crawled into her lap and put my arms around her to comfort her. Aunt Baba told me that Nene's life had evaporated like an episode in a spring dream. Outside, I could hear crickets humming in the summer heat and hawkers shouting their wares on the pavement below. How could everything remain so much the same when Nene was no longer with us? Nene's body was placed in a tightly sealed coffin in the parlor. Buddhist monks dressed in long robes chanted mantras. Yi ordered us children to spend the night and sleep on the floor in the same room to keep Nene company. Third brother whispered in my ear that Nene was going to push open the coffin lid and wander out at midnight. I was scared and couldn't sleep. All that night, while listening to the monks praying and watching their shining bald heads in the flickering candlelight, I half yearned and half feared that Nene would crawl out and resume her place among us. Next day, there was a grand funeral. Nene's coffin was draped with white sheets and placed on a hearse and pulled by 4 men. We all dressed in white robes with white headbands for the boys and white ribbons for the girls. Big brother acted as chief mourner in father's absence. Hired musicians extolled Nene's virtues. They tossed white paper coins into the air while making music and singing prayers. The hearse stopped 6 times so Big Brother could fall to his knees, kowtow, and bewail Nene's loss in a loud voice. At the Buddhist temple, the monks held a solemn ceremony. Amid hymns and the scent of the incense, we burned articles made of paper or cardboard for Nene's needs in the next world. There were cardboard beds, tables, chairs, pots, pans, even a mahjong set. My brothers fought over a large paper car covered with bright tinfoil. I watched the smoke curl up from the sacrificial urn and believed with all my heart that it would regroup somewhere into household utensils for the exclusive use of our Nene in heaven. Chapter 5. Arrival in Shanghai. 6 weeks after Nene's funeral, Yi took big sister, big brother, second brother, and me for an outing. To our surprise, our car stopped first at the railroad station. After instructing our chauffeur to wait outside in the car, Yi marched the four of us into a crowded platform marked with a sign to Shanghai. There, in a first class compartment, we came face to face with father, sitting by himself. He was dressed in a black suit and black tie. His eyes were red, and he had been crying. We were delighted and astonished. Big sister asked, "How long have you been back, father?" He told her he had just arrived hours ago, but was planning to leave again almost immediately. He said he missed us and was in Tianjin, especially to escort us south to Shanghai. Where was Shanghai? It was a large port city 1,000 miles away, and our grand aunt owned a big bank there. He, Naing, and fourth brother had been living there a year and a half. Since third brother was still recuperating from measles, he would join us later with little sister. Yi and Aunt Baba, being devout Buddhists, Yi and Aunt Baba wished to observe the traditional 100-day religious mourning period for Nai Nai before leaving Tangjun. "What about our clothes?" Big Brother asked. "Aunt Baba is arranging to have them delivered separately," Father replied. "If you had taken too much luggage with you, the servants would have become suspicious. It's important that the servants know nothing about my whereabouts. Otherwise, the Japanese might arrest me. During the train journey, talk to each other as little as possible so you give nothing away. Now say goodbye to your Yuyi. The train is leaving in 5 minutes." Father's Shanghai house was on Avenue Joffrey, deep in the heart of the French Concession. It was a big, square, dark gray concrete building, just like all the other 69 houses within the same long tang, a cluster of houses surrounded by a communal wall. Father's chauffeur drove us from the station through the main lane of our long tang, turned left onto a narrower alleyway, and stopped in front of a wrought iron gate. Father led us into a charming garden with a small lawn lined by clipped camellia bushes, a magnolia tree with wonderfully fragrant blooms, and a wishing well next to a wooden doghouse. A large, ferocious German shepherd rushed out and jumped excitedly at the sight of father, but barked at us. I glanced briefly at the fierce, brutish animal with its sharp teeth and pointed ears. Father noticed and said to me, "His name is Jackie. Don't be afraid of him. Just behave naturally. He is getting obedience training lessons every week from a German dog trainer. He won't dare bite you." All the same, I was nervous. I got away and followed Big Brother up 3 stone steps through a tall French doors into the formal living room. "Here we are," Father said, looking around proudly as we gawked in open-mouthed wonder at the burgundy velvet couches, matching velvet curtains, and thick woolen carpet partially covering the teak parquet floor. The wallpaper had long strips of raised velvet napping that matched the curtains. Beautiful white orchids in the antique Ming Dynasty vase rested on an elegant imitation Louis XVI coffee table. Everything was ornate, formal, polished, and hard. Naing entered holding fourth brother's hand. We greeted her timidly. Like the room, our stepmother was also stylish and flawless, with her large, piercing eyes, long, shapely nails, painted bright red, and enormous flashing diamonds at her throat, wrist, and ears. Standing opposite her made me feel quite shabby and ill at ease. "Sit down, all of you, and welcome to our Shanghai home," Naing announced in a loud, clear voice. "The maids will show you to your room. This house consists of 3 floors. On the ground floor, the living room and the dining room are in the front. The kitchen, garage, and the servants' quarters are in the back. You are to enter and leave the house by the back door only. The front gate leading out of the garden is reserved for father's guests. So is the living room. You are not to invite any of your friends home or to visit them in their houses. The second floor is where your father and I and your younger brother and sister have our rooms. You are not allowed to enter any of the rooms on our floor without our permission. All of you will live on the 3rd floor. You 3 boys will sleep in the same room. Wu Mei, fourth daughter, will share a room with Aunt Baba. Yi Yi and big sister will have a private room. Keep your rooms tidy because your father and I might come up and make an inspection at any time. We have enrolled all of you at a very expensive private missionary schools. School starts next Monday. Now go with the maids to your rooms and wash yourselves. In half an hour, cook will ring the dinner bell. As soon as you hear it, All of you will come down at once. Do you understand?" We nodded solemnly. As we climbed the stairs, Big Brother muttered, To her, we are not separate people. Here we have become one single unit known as all of you. Seems like this is how it's going to be from now on." Okay, that was the end of chapter 5.